Welcome into the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. It is your March Madness preview. We are recording basically 2 hours after the bracket has been revealed. Some of us have the women's tournament selection show on right now as we record this, but here we are. It is myself, Nick Burt, Jada Coster, Matt Merrifield. No Justin Walsh tonight. He's somewhere in Arizona doing something. Who knows? He's filling out a bracket online. That's what he's doing, and that is sacrilegious, if you ask me. Jada Coster, we will come to you first. How are you doing on this Sunday night as we record?
Well, I was doing well until my plans got altered by a 10 o'clock tip time in Cleveland. What a joke! Like, that's terrorism at its finest. That's for the Seattle region. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, we'll obviously mention some tip times as we go along, but that is an absolute disaster of a tip time. Matt, you are the one that's going to have to deal with the tip time the most because you guys will be broadcasting from the Rocket Arena on Friday, at least for Friday, hopefully for Sunday too. But I mean, how are you doing on this Sunday night?
I mean, I'm absolutely immaculate. Finally made it back from Indianapolis after a slow drive back up from I-69 up towards East Lansing, Michigan. But I guess better safe than in a ditch somewhere, even though there's nobody on the road. But hey, we finally made it back. And gotta say, this is one of the brackets of all time. I mean, I finally made my way through and filled out an initial one on pen and paper. Right here. Unfortunately, I hate it, and it's disgusting. And half the picks on there, it's not as bad as last year. It really isn't. Last year, I did not know what to fill half of them. This one, I feel more confident. But then I turn on ESPN, and everybody's got 1s and 2 seeds in the Final Four. Actually, all 1 seeds in the Final Four, except Michigan State's the only 2 I've seen in. Not great. And everybody has Florida winning it all. So I might have to go back to the drawing board, which is not good. But hey, vibes could be higher, vibes could be lower, but domestic terrorism was committed to put Michigan State on at 10 p.m. on a Friday night. 10 p.m. local time. But hey, got to do what you got to do.
Got to fight through the adversity of that late tip time in Cleveland. Obviously, Cleveland, a very fun place to be after 10 p.m., maybe. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure Matt's still there. His Wi-Fi is currently the quality of a potato right now. But we'll just get into it. We'll go around the bracket kind of just like they do with the committee. So we'll start in the South region. Figure we'll just go down the matchups and then kind of go around and see what we're looking at here. So you have as your 1 seed, you have Auburn. In this South Regional, they will be playing the winner of the Alabama State St. Francis play-in game. Then you got Louisville Creighton as your 8-9 game. You move down the bracket, you have the Big Ten tournament champions. Note the tournament part of it there. Michigan, the 5 seed, taking on UC San Diego, the debutantes to the tournament. Texas A&M takes on Yale in the 4-13 game. Ole Miss is your 6 seed. They will be taking on the winner of San Diego State, North Carolina. The 3 seed is Iowa State taking on 14 seed Lipscomb. And then you get down to your 7-10. That is Marquette against New Mexico. And your 2-15, as mentioned, a 10 p.m. tip-off live from Cleveland. It is Michigan State against Bryant. It looks like we do have a special guest joining us. It is sometimes hard to tell with Matt's Wi-Fi, but it looks like we have Heath joining us, a great Hoosier that will have a lot to say about Purdue potentially losing in the first round of this tournament. So, Matt, I'll just start with you. Your thoughts on the South. Heath, feel free to jump into, say whatever you need.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome him. For those that do not know this man, he is the squirrel that dresses up at MSU home basketball games. Will not do that ever again, unfortunately, as he is also graduating with me. But this is Heath Broad, a known Hoosier from the state of Indiana, not natural Indiana Hoosier, even though his whole family is. But he has a lot of opinions coming up in a moment. But yeah, in the South region, I mean, I guess they could be worse for MSU in terms of looking at it. I mean, the first weekend, Marquette and New Mexico, I think will be they're more better offensive teams than they are defensive teams, which typically favors MSU because as long as they can score, I mean, yesterday was the first time they scored 70 and lost all year. So I do like this region. I'm happy Michigan got San Diego because the team that turns the ball over a lot against a team that takes advantage of that very well. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I don't know how I feel about Auburn. I know they're kind of in an up and down spot right now. And I like Creighton a lot. As much as a Big East supremacist, they might be dangerous. I don't know what you're thinking, Heath, after.
No, I like MSU's draw quite a bit. I think we could have done a whole lot worse with a lot of the teams. Maybe we could have gotten like a Kansas in the second round. I don't know that I would have been happier with anybody else, but I think, frankly, I Mountain West teams do tend to underperform a little bit, and I have no problem playing Shaka Smart again after his recent kind of missteps in the tournament. So I'm really kind of liking it. And then Auburn, I think, will edge out Creighton a little bit, but I think this is kind of one of those runs for Tom and MSU. I think that it's one of those like Duke 2019 games where nobody thinks we can do it, and then we just pull off with one of those Spartan games and just toughness and grit. We just get through it.
Jay, we'll go to you next. Obviously, you have your eyes on that potential second round matchup in the DeCoster household of Marquette against Michigan State for what would be, I believe, the second time in 3 years. Just your kind of overall thoughts here on the South region.
Yeah, I mean, what you guys said. I mean, Michigan is a team that's going to turn the ball over. That's going to be a very popular 12-5 upset pick. Not really sure if I want to go that far yet. Obviously Texas A&M, Yale. I mean, Yale is, run the Ivy League for the last 3 years. They're going to be a very popular one as well, and they're even better than last year without Danny Wolf. As far as the other teams go, I mean, you guys were talking about Auburn. I mean, they are very beatable. They're not a bunch of world beaters. I mean, they look solid in the SEC tournament, but I mean, they've had some losses where they look vulnerable. I mean, I think as far as Michigan State we're concerned here, they can definitely get through this region. I mean, Iowa State, they have their flaws as well. They're not a great rebounding team. So that's a team that Michigan State can get through in order to get to to get to that next weekend, potentially play Auburn in the Elite Eight. But yeah, this region's interesting. I mean, you got teams like Ole Miss who can really, beat you from three. And, as far as Michigan State's concerned, like Heath said, Marquette doesn't scare me at all. They're way worse than last year. They they're missing Oso Godaro really badly right now. They don't have any good center place, big men down low that can help them out. So I think Michigan State can easily get to Atlanta pretty easily here. And I mean, this region is interesting because there's Michigan's, they won the Big Ten tournament. They can do some damage, but also, with their turnover problem, they can get bounced pretty easily. So we'll have to see. But as far as Michigan State's concerned, I really like this draw for them because if they got Florida, it would have been a whole lot tougher. So.
And since it wasn't mentioned, we'll just mention it quickly. With that 11 play-in game, you have North Carolina making the tournament. Just kind of, Jay, I'll go to you first on that one. It kind of feels like everybody is very much on board with they probably shouldn't have made it, but your kind of thoughts here on North Carolina's situation?
I agree. I just feel like it's just a ratings draw. The UNC athletic director, I believe, he's part of the committee, and they're 1-12 in quad one games. This is not a good basketball team. And, you had teams like West Virginia getting the axe for them. It's just doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, they're not going to go far, but West Virginia should have been in over them. It's pretty stupid. But I mean, we're not going to get into Indiana because they shouldn't have been in either. But I feel like a team like West Virginia should have taken over for their spot. Just didn't really make a lot of sense in my opinion. But that's what TV, they want the ratings. They want those ratings in Dayton. Like, I'm not surprised with this at all. Like, we knew this was kind of coming. So,
And then Matt, it did kind of feel like this was coming, but here we are anyways. North Carolina in, and then you do look at some of the names like West Virginia and Indiana, both out. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Indiana was a tough one, but I thought between them and North Carolina was kind of a toss-up of two teams that just have severely underperformed this year. So it's kind of whichever one you put in, yeah, they might be dangerous in the game they get in for. They'll probably win their game in Dayton. Like, I think UNC is going to end up beating San Diego State, but from there, I don't think either one of these teams are going to would beat Ole Miss for how well coached the team. Chris Beard usually runs his ship, but West Virginia I feel horribly for, because that was a more than good enough team. There were brackets that had them as a 9 seed, 10 seed, and they fall all the way out of the tournament. I believe it's the first time ever that all 115 brackets on Bracket Matrix, where they were in all 115, and they're the first team ever not to get in that scenario. Tucker DeVries has been hurt, but they've found a way to win games without him. I didn't realize back in January when I started noticing them that DeVries was hurt, and I was like, oh, wait, he's been hurt for a month, and they're still, sneaking their way, being a solid West or Big 12 team. I feel horribly for that program, especially because DeVries might leave for. So they're 1 year with, they seem like the ship was going the right direction. They didn't get rewarded with a bid in the tournament. I think that's disappointing. But I will say I am honored to have been a part of Mike Woodson's last post-game press conference now. I got to sit there and listen to Woody talk after the Oregon game. So I guess I have that to hang my hat on. But I don't know if you have any thoughts, Heath, on the Hoosiers.
Yeah, that it was disappointing. I definitely thought that North Carolina was an absolute brand pick, and I have family that are connected to the IU program and know several managers, and it seemed like the net rating was a bigger factor than most would think. They got absolutely thumped in the beginning of the year by some pretty bad lower tier Big Ten opponents, and I think that with their midseason or early season struggles of just getting floored by some good teams and some not so good teams really just cost them. But I still can't justify putting in North Carolina over Indiana in any scenario. That's just not a good team. They don't have really any good wins. I don't know if they have a ranked win on the year. I wouldn't think so, but I feel for that fan base because it's such a passionate fan base and it's one of the top jobs in the entire country. But I think now you're kind of getting to see the bad side of just writing a blank check and getting players that just want to come play for money. After they get their money, it just kind of the effort and the intangibles just kind of sail off into the distance, and you're left with question marks and disappointment.
Yeah, I guess my last point would be everybody kind of draws a comparison between basketball and football. Tom Izzo talks about how they should use the eye test more, and basically what he said is, I don't know if he said F the analytics day or screw the analytics day, but once again he talked about his long history of hating analytics. But in basketball, truly at some point you have to start winning games. I think in a football season, close losses I don't have an issue with because you play 12 games. You're going to lose close games, especially when you're a good team playing against other good teams. UNC at this point, you got to win at some point. And it's not like they're playing in the SEC. Oklahoma should not be a 9 seed. And I know we'll get to them in a second. But at some point you got to start winning basketball games, guys. And I'm glad Ohio State was out, but Indiana was winning games. They did go on the road and beat a 2 seed Michigan State. They did win a couple other decent games. They were competitive, and they also UNC. They didn't. As much as we beat on the Big Ten for not being any good, the ACC is not any good. So I'm really not sure. But then again, Virginia got in last year when they definitely shouldn't have. And, the terrorism basketball that they played in Dayton, thank God they lost. But, yeah, I guess that's my last thoughts.
Matt, I kind of completely forgot about that Virginia game last year. Thanks for bringing that terrorism back up because that was something. We should say, because I know everybody's following the most important tournament of all. Indiana has turned down an opportunity to play in the college basketball crown, so that is quite disappointing. We will not get a Mike Woodson farewell tour in Las Vegas. That is quite disappointing, but here we are anyways. Kind of my overall thoughts on the South. I mean, Auburn, yes, they've lost 2 of 3, but they're still, I mean, they were still the number 1 overall seed. They're still going to be very good. You can probably pencil them in to at least make the Elite 8. I know a lot of people are going to be on UC San Diego, but Matt did the research today. First time bidders in their first tournament games since FGCU did it in 2013. I believe they're 0 for 22 in their first round games. So that does not make me optimistic about the Tritons. What does make me optimistic, though, is obviously this game will be on Thursday. It's a 10 p.m. tip. So we were complaining about Michigan State having a 10 p.m. tip. Michigan's got to go across the country, play a 10 p.m. tip against a team that's already, acclimated to that time. So I still don't know where I'm going to fall there. Iowa State, they're very injury prone. I think their ceiling is probably a Sweet 16 where they probably end up losing to a Michigan State team. And like it was mentioned, that this Michigan State team, it kind of feels like, at least this part of the bracket, it feels like a 2019 type bracket where you're in the number 1 overall seeds region. You most likely will see them in the Elite 8. Nobody's going to have you winning that, and then who knows what can happen from there. It's going to be very interesting to see how that South region plays out. Let's move on. I'm not actually going to follow what the selection show did. We're just going straight down the bracket. We'll go to the West region. Your 1-16 matchup there is Florida, Norfolk State. Your 8-9 game is UConn, Oklahoma. Your 5-12 is Memphis, Colorado State. Your 4-13 is Maryland, Grand Canyon. 6-11 is Missouri, Drake. Your 3-14 is Texas Tech, UNC Wilmington. Your 7-10 game is Kansas, Arkansas. That is a coaching matchup, to say the least. And your 2-15 is St. John's, your Big East champions, against the 15 seed Oklahoma, the Summit League champions. So, Matt and Heath, will start with you on this West Regional. Matt, I know where we originally were, I'd say 5 hours ago. We were talking about how nobody's talking about Florida. And now here we are 5 hours later, and everybody has Florida winning the national championship. How the times change very quickly.
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing for somebody that was, as much as we've tried to crunch the numbers here over the last month or so and get ready for filling out our bracket. Florida, every time I go through everything right now, in terms of the historic numbers of the trends, they check every box, and it sucks that everybody's on them because normally it's not the case. You have if Auburn literally could win like one more game than they had in the last week, I think everybody would still be picking them. So that's what disappoints me. This region, I don't think there's going to be too many surprises in this region based on what I filled out. I said last night after watching Colorado State beat Boise that I was all in on them, and them getting Memphis in Seattle. I love it. I think I have to take Colorado State there. I think there's only 2 chances of a 5-12 because I think Clemson and Oregon are safe. I think Michigan's very much at risk. But I think Colorado State's a really good basketball team. I mean, they got Nick Clifford. That kid can take over a game. He's one of the best players in the country. So I think they fit the boxes. I know Tyrese Hunter is banged up. He didn't play today for Memphis, if I'm not mistaken. If they're not full strength, love Penny Hardaway. So I really like Colorado State. Maryland against Grand Canyon. Maryland's a good enough team with their top 6 guys. I think they can get through that game and then get to the Sweet 16. UConn will beat Oklahoma. As much as Jeremiah Fierce, the stud, UConn's going to win it. Give me Dan Hurley. As good of a coach as Porter Moser is, give me Dan Hurley and the UConn Huskies. Drake is a very unique team, but I think Missouri's solid enough on both sides of the ball that they'll get it done. I think Texas Tech, I'm really a fan of them. I don't love their defense, and I think they'll eventually lose to St. John's. Kansas will beat Arkansas. As much as I hate Kansas, Arkansas is a bad basketball team. Like, they got in, they probably deserve to be in. But, man, I watched them play in South Carolina the other day, and they needed to win. And they tried every possible way to lose. And then they had that game against South Carolina a couple weeks ago where they could not make a shot. And I know South Carolina's a really good team for being last in the SEC, but I have St. John's and Florida. I mean, I have the top 4 seeds all make it to the Sweet 16. I have St. John's and Florida in the Elite 8. I mean, this region nothing really stands out to me here. There's some solid, I think UNCW is fine. I like Nebraska Omaha a lot. Unfortunately, they're playing St. John's, and Rick Pitino's not going to lose that basketball game, not in Providence. So, yeah, but I think Florida gets out of the region, regardless of whether they win it all or not. They're the best team in basketball right now.
Florida is, I think, the hottest team in the entire country. I have them winning the whole thing for me. They just look so good, and they pass every single test that you can imagine. They've beaten all the good teams in the SEC. They ran through the SEC championship or the SEC tournament, and they clearly look like the best team in the SEC, which has been the best conference all year long. I'm not quite sure how Oklahoma got it all the way up to a 9. I was a little surprised by that one, and I think UConn got a gimme, but I still think Florida is better than UConn there. I really like Colorado State as well, like Matt said, but depending with the injury situation with Memphis, I don't know who's their guard, Tyrese Hunter. I don't know what the situation if he were to be. Yeah, but their starting 5 is just so good, so I can see them making quite a bit of noise. But Florida is just too good. I like Texas Tech out of that bottom group. I think Texas Tech has enough physicality and enough offensive punch to stick with St. John's and beat St. John's. It will be tough with just being Rick Pitino being such a good coach and having such good success in his first couple years with his first starting jobs in their seasons. And the Kansas-Arkansas game, I don't even know if I want to watch that game just because but neither of those teams are very good, and I just don't – I kind of would like to pick Arkansas, but at the same time, I don't know. I really am stuck on that one because I don't know if either of those teams give me much hope for like a clear advantage through that game. I don't know. Other than Florida making it through that whole side, and I think being the champion, I think that's kind of the only certainty there.
All right, Jay, we'll go to you next. Your kind of overall thoughts here. This is a very interesting West region. Some of the seeding seems off by a lot, some of it off by a little. Your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the trendy pick is Colorado State, Memphis. I mean, Colorado State's a red hot team right now, coming out of the Mountain West. And you got Memphis. I mean, they're a hit or miss. I mean, they're very inconsistent, but they're a very talented team. I'm actually going to go the opposite here. I'm going to take Memphis in the spot. Very talented, obviously, depending on the injury situation. But, when you're getting Memphis at its best, they can really do a lot of damage. So I'll take Memphis to get the win here over Colorado State. As far as this other region, I also have, everyone's going to take Florida because of what they did in the SEC championship. A little bit of hesitancy. Yes, they passed every challenge, but also, you get that rest factor. You ran through that gauntlet of playing all those top teams. Is fatigue going to be a little bit of a factor? Or are they going to run into a hot team, like a potentially if they run into Maryland or something like that? How is that going to affect them? But I like Florida run through this region. Texas Tech and St. John's is going to be a fascinating one in the Sweet 16. You got Texas Tech, a top 5 offensive rated team in KenPom, going up against the number 1 rated defensive team. So that is going to be fascinating. I think Texas Tech can definitely get it done there. And as far as Kansas, Arkansas, I'm going to take Kansas to win that game. I know they haven't been great, but Arkansas could barely squeak by and able to get in the tournament. Give me a great ratings factor, but who really cares? Both these teams aren't very good. I'll take Kansas in that spot. And I like Florida to go through and get to the Final Four in this matchup. As far as other potential upsets, Drake is certainly intriguing. They have a lot of experience, coming out of the Missouri Valley, but I do like Missouri. run past them. They're really talented. They've done really well in the SEC this year, going up against very good competition. So I'll take them. And then I'll go with Florida. I mean, St. John's is going to be a very trendy pick with Pitino, but I mean, can their offense get it done against Florida? We'll have to see. So I'll take Florida though.
Yeah, as I look at this West region, a few games kind of stick out to me. I don't know why, but that Maryland Grand Canyon game, something just kind of seems off about it. Kind of seems like a game where, Maryland not having like depth play could come as a big factor there. I know they basically only lost because of a buzzer beater to Michigan in the Big Ten tournament semis, and I can't say I've watched a lot of Grand Canyon basketball this year, so that's another thing. I may just be picking that purely off vibes. The Kansas-Arkansas game, Arkansas probably shouldn't be in this tournament, but here we are anyways. That has very much been put there because of that coaching factor. You got Self versus Calipari with potential game against Pitino in the second round. I've said probably since February that Michigan State and St. John's are the same team. And I still think that. I think both of them have slowly kind of figured out their three-point game, which helps with the tournament. But both of them, they're either going to the Final Four or they're losing heartbreakingly in the first round, and it doesn't feel like there's any in between. Just off the high of winning the Big East, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Omaha pull it off. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think Omaha probably has the best shot of any 15 seed to win here. And I don't remember who I texted this to. It may have been to you, Matt. It may have been to friend of the program, Cy Nardoni. It may have been to Allie Cohen, who was supposed to join us tonight. But I said if UConn beats Florida, they're winning this region. I know Matt's going to shake his head at that and think I'm crazy. This UConn team could go on a run. You never know. That's just me gaslighting myself into believing in this team. It's not going to happen. Florida is going to make the Final Four here out of this West region. So let's move on to the East, where you are going to have the number one seed Duke Blue Devils. Will they have Cooper Flag is the real question. They will be playing the winner of the playing game between American and Mount St. Mary's. That was a tournament prediction we know Matt Merrifield got correct because of the former player carrying his father up the stairs, which was then followed up by Jay Walsh picking St. Peter's to win the tournament, and they didn't even make the MAAC tournament. Your 8-9 game is Mississippi State against Baylor. Your 5-12 game is a rematch of the 2024 Fiesta Bowl between Oregon and Liberty, Bo Nix's last game in college. Your 4-13 game is Arizona-Akron. Your 6-11 game is BYU-VCU. 3-14 Wisconsin-Montana. Your 7-10 game is St. Mary's against Vanderbilt. And your 2-15 is Alabama and Robert Morris. Jay, we'll start with you. Your kind of thoughts here on the East region. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these teams are interesting. I mean, Oregon has been, they have a lot of quad one wins. They've kind of ended the season pretty hot, except for the loss against MSU. I mean, I could see them doing some damage to get even give Duke a run for their money. Arizona, they're just so hit or miss, especially with Caleb Love. You never know what they're going to get out of them. As far as the games go, I mean, I'll take Mississippi State over Baylor. Baylor's been kind of just a middle of the pack, middling Big 12 team this year. So I'm going to take Mississippi State in that 8-9 game. Obviously, give me Duke. I like Oregon over Liberty. I mean, Oregon's been playing solid, so I'll take them. Akron's interesting. I mean, they know how to win. They had that thrilling MAC championship win. I'll take Arizona, but Akron is very intriguing to me. As far as BYU goes, I love this BYU team. I mean, VCU has looked really good today, but I mean, BYU, honestly, they have a chance. I would not be surprised if they honestly ended up winning this region. they're very, very good this year in the Big 12. Give me Wisconsin over Montana. I think that's a pretty simple one. Even though Wisconsin in March, not really a fan of. Vanderbilt. I mean, they always give top teams a run for their money, but St. Mary's I feel like always finds a way to win that first game in the round of 64. So I'll take St. Mary's, and then I'll give me Bama. As far as this region goes, I mean, Bama got a really good draw here. I mean, you're looking at teams like Wisconsin, like I mentioned earlier, that just don't perform well in the tournament under Greg Gard. BYU is going to be a tough one, but I really like Bama to come out of this region here. I'm not going to lie. I mean, once their offense gets going, they get really hot. I mean, I know they made it last year, but also, they could still find a way to do damage. And obviously, depending on Cooper Flagg's health, Duke, I mean, the ACC is just so weak this year. I don't see how. I mean, I could see it, but I mean, I just think Bama can really get over the hump against Duke. So I will take Alabama to win this region.
Matt, Heath, we'll go to you next here. This East region, very intriguing. Your kind of thoughts here.
Nick, it's very funny that Jay is picking Bama to win this region because I love Robert Morris. And I love that they get a home game, a bona fide home game. I know they're from Pittsburgh, but they're going to have as much of a home court advantage as a 15 seed can possibly have. I don't know what the undergrad body is at Robert Morris. Bama fits the mold of the big seed to go down. They play way too fast. They don't play any defense. They did not play very well against their non-conference teams. Like the mid majors that they should have beat, they did not play very well against this year. I think they only beat McNeese by 8 at home. There were a couple other mid major teams they played that they did not convincingly blow out, which in teams in the past, the Purdue's, the Arizona's against Princeton a couple years ago. Kentucky had a couple of hiccups last year where they played close games. I think Bama's a big team to go down throughout this region. I think a Big Ten teams win this region. Right now I have Wisconsin winning the region because I like their draw because I don't think VCU or BYU are super great. They're both very solid teams. I like what I saw from VCU. I think VCU will win that 11-6 matchup. I think Vanderbilt gets to the Sweet 16. I like him as a head coach, but I like Wisconsin's matchup to get to the Elite Eight. And I think Arizona beats Akron because those two teams play very similar styles. The major high-powered team, the Power 5 team, to get the win there. Like if your two teams are going to play the same style, Arizona's going to win on the track meet. Take the over in that game. I like Duke, but Oregon's a tough team. I mean, Jackson Shellstad, I think, is a guy that could take over a game. He can shoot his team out of a game, but he's done a good job of not doing that this year in most scenarios, even in games where Oregon's lost. Shellstad has shown the poise to not shoot himself out of a game, but when he gets hot, that can stop him. They have the size with Bamba on the things to shut down a player like Cooper Flagg or at least slow him down, limit his effectiveness. They got Nate Biddle down low, a senior center who's an absolute stud. I mean, this team has enough, and Dana Altman has been very good in March. I mean, Oregon's a tough team to beat in this tournament. They went on a run the Pac-12 tournament last year, beat South Carolina. They've gone on runs years prior. Obviously, everybody remembers Peyton Pritchard. Everybody remembers the 2017 team that should have been playing for a national title. So I think Wisconsin or Oregon wins this region. I have Wisconsin, but I'm very excited for this region. I think there's some fun matchups in here. And yeah, I think Robert Morris beats Bama on the first round.
It's definitely bold. This region was like the Wild West to me. I struggled so much picking a winner out of this region because I just don't see a dominant team like I saw with Florida and the other side. But Duke concerns me only because they haven't played in enough big games, and I just don't know if I trust them enough to win 3 or 4 just tough, gauntlet, grinded out games against good Oregon team or a good Wisconsin team or maybe a Bama team. I just don't know. I really also like Oregon, but Arizona also intrigues me a little. Big 12 conference, but it's so hard for me to pick against Dana Altman in March. He's also got a bit of a track record I don't even know if I picked that game, the winner of that game yet on my bracket. I'm so torn between that. And I think the winner of that actually will beat Duke on that side. VCU, I feel like, is not being talked about enough, and BYU is just on another planet, and they've got all the hype. But VCU, I feel like, is not being talked about enough. And usually when these 11, 12 seed teams are not on the face of the national media, they overperform and they shock everybody comparatively, where they're talking about Drake or they're talking about UC San Diego. I don't feel like VCU's gotten enough attention, and why I feel like they could be a sneaky one. Wisconsin is also an interesting case because, as we saw today, they just laid an absolute stinker against Michigan. I don't know if they'll have a repeat performance after. I think they'll make it through to the Sweet 16, but I just don't know. Are they going to have another case in the Elite Eight, where they had it today, where they just came out and just were gassed? They had no punch offensively and were just clinging on for dear life for most of the game. That concerns me for Wisconsin, but I don't think it's out of the question that they could definitely make it to a Final Four. I like St. Mary's against Vanderbilt. I think St. Mary's, I like Jay said, I think they just find a way to win that game when nobody thinks they can, and I really like their head coach. Bama is a team I also just can't put my finger on because they don't play any defense, and I don't like teams that play zero defense in March Madness. It just never seems to work out that well. But I just don't know how Wisconsin is going to be in terms of just how their legs and how their stamina, how they're rested. I just don't know how they're going to fare against Bama, but I would eke Wisconsin, I guess, over Bama, but I still like I kind of like an upset of Oregon going to a Final Four here. This is kind of my wild prediction going on, but I think Oregon wins this region.
You know what? I agree with that. I like Oregon to come out of this region. And that's not just because of the magic Tony Stubblefield is going to put on those sidelines for Oregon in this tournament. But I think Duke's very beatable. I don't think Cooper Flagg is going to be 100% at any point in this tournament. Just with the way kind of everybody's talking about it. Like, I know Shire is kind of saying, we hope he's ready by Friday. Hope isn't the same as he is going to be ready by Friday. I think they're very beatable. The ACC was bad this year. I know they beat Illinois by 1,000 a few weeks ago at MSG, but I still think they're very beatable. That BYU VCU game, I liked VCU until the game was in Denver. That's a quick turnaround for them. It's a different time zone compared to, obviously, BYU, same time zone in Utah as it is in Denver. That kind of has me leaning towards BYU there, even though they had the exact same seeding last year. They were a 6th seed. They played an 11 seed A-10 champion, which was Duquesne last year, and they lost. This is a different BYU team this year. I think they actually got better without Mark Pope. I like BYU there. I like BYU to make a run to the Sweet 16. I think this Wisconsin team may just be out of gas. And even though Matt likes Robert Morris here, I'm taking Alabama. I think they can make a run here to the Elite Eight, but I think it's going to be Oregon that goes to the Final Four. I don't know how it happens, but give me the Ducks and Tony Stubblefield to make the Final Four. Let's get to our last region, the Midwest region. Your 1 seed is Houston. They take on the 16 seed SIU Edwardsville. Your 8-9 game is the Battle of the Bulldogs between Gonzaga and Georgia. Your 5-12 game is the Clemson-McNeese game, a game where both coaches may be leaving town once they lose. Your 4-13 game is Purdue against High Point. Your 6-11 is Illinois taking on the winner of the playing game between Texas and Xavier. Your 3-14 is Kentucky against Troy. Your 7:10 game is UCLA against Utah State, and your 2:15 is Tennessee against Wofford. That rounds out the tournament. Matt, Heath, we'll go to you first for the Midwest region. Houston is your number 1 seed here, but do you have them making a run to the Final Four here?
I'm kind of, but unfortunately, I feel like I have to take Houston because I don't like the bottom of this region like at all. I like the top half of it, honestly. But like I don't know if I know we talked about this, Nick, about teams and how long they can go without losing a basketball game. Obviously, everyone was talking about Michigan State yesterday, how losing a game is kind of necessary at this point in the year. And I forget what day I did the stat of the day of the most recent loss before a tournament run. The longest team since like 2009 to go without a loss to a title was Louisville in 2013. Their last was on February 9th of that year in a 5 overtime game against Notre Dame. Houston's last loss was February 1st. And since 2000, I think was the last time I looked during the Ken Pom era, no team has ever gone since January without losing a game. So it's tough for me to pick Houston. But, I mean, I was not screaming, but in the MSU press room today while they were showing the selection show, waiting for Tom Izzo to come. I was begging when they showed Gonzaga for UConn to be put with them. And I know you said, Nick, they already played this year, so they wouldn't put them again together. But I was very adamant and very vocal about my want for the UConn Huskies. Georgia's still a fun matchup, but I think Gonzaga will win that game. Unfortunately, just like every other national title pick I've had preseason, they're going to lose in the second round. So I think Houston moves on, even though I think Houston-Gonzaga is going to be an absolutely stellar basketball game. I believe that'll be a Saturday game. Clemson, I know Clemson's head coach is halfway out the door, most likely. I don't think he's for sure gone, to be completely honest. I know he probably will go somewhere. But Will Wade is gone. Will Wade is a North Carolina State Wolfpack. Like he's halfway out the door. Or he got his keys in the kitchen. Like that's literally all he's coming back in for this tournament game. They lost to a Gonzaga team last. They got blown out. McNeese isn't winning this game. They got their team manager signing NIL deals. Like what are we doing? Purdue High Point, I'm torn on because as Nick, we talked about today, first time teams in the tournament do not do well in the tournament. A first time team hasn't won since 2013 with Florida Gulf Coast. And we have 4 this year, but man, Purdue is so one-dimensional. And I mean, Heath is about to get to in a second. He can tear into them more than I can, but like they are horrifically one-sided. Like Braden Smith just does his thing or he throws it to Kaufman Run. And if you take away Fletcher Lawyer, you are going to beat Purdue. He is literally their silver lining. If he plays bad, like he did against Michigan State, like he did on, Friday against Michigan, when he's bad, that team is terrible and they're not good. They have no depth. So High Point's like I don't know. I think Purdue might win. I am hesitant because typically 14 seeds do not do very well against 3 seeds as much as they're usually a popular upset pick. Historically speaking, the drop off from a 12-5 or 13-4 upset is pretty significant. So I think initially I only have one, and I think this is going to be the one. So I think I am going to go with High Point here, but I don't love it simply because they're a first-year team. But this is a really good mid-major, and they're not a top 16 team in the country. Moving down, I think Illinois gets their first win. I think Kentucky will bounce back with Mark Pope. UCLA will win. Tennessee will win. But that bottom quadrant, like Illinois, Kentucky, I don't want to pick a winner. Like I don't like either one of those teams. Right now I have Illinois. I'm probably going to switch to Kentucky. Right now I have Tennessee. I think I'm going to stick with that. But Tennessee, Kentucky is not a Sweet 16 matchup. But Illinois, I know they have the highest ceiling in the Big Ten. I was waiting for Seth Davis to say it today, and he didn't. But them against Kentucky scares me because I don't know who's going to win. I have Houston, Tennessee in the Elite Eight, and I hate it. Like Houston's going to make it, I think, but who they play, I don't know. I mean, that bottom portion is not good. But I don't know. I got Houston going to the Final Four, but I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, Houston, of course, got rewarded for having a really good season with a really good Gonzaga team coming right out of the gates, which I think Gonzaga will win that Georgia matchup. And then I think Clemson will match up later, and they're also one of the hottest teams in the country, and one of the only good ACC teams. Those two teams are great, and they're going to give Houston a run for their money. But I do like Houston going to a Final Four in the national championship game. Now, the Purdue question, he kind of said most of it. They're so reliant on three guys to do every single thing they need for their team. Their 2-point percentage defense is just atrocious. They have no rim protection. TKR scores, he'll score 20 a game. Smith will get his, but outside of that, they just have who can't play Big Ten basketball other than like Fletcher Loyer is a good player when he's hitting shots, but their bench is just atrocious. They did have an injury to Daniel Jacobson early in the year that really hurt their roster construction, and I think made Matt Painter want to play a different style than what he wanted. But Matt Painter just has a rough track record in March. That team is just poorly built. And the one concerning thing I saw was they looked gassed against Michigan and just unable to find any kind of answers with a week to prep and a week to kind of get it together for a good run in the tournament. And then they just fell flat on their face and just had no answer for a reeling Michigan team. I don't like Purdue at all, especially given their track record. I like High Point, even though it's their first time in the tournament. I like Illinois and Kentucky to play in that second round. Like Matt said, I really don't want to pick a winner there, but I think Mark Pope will get the job done, and we'll get a rematch with a Kentucky-Tennessee Sweet 16, and I think Kentucky will go to the Elite Eight with Houston. With Tennessee, I like their defense. I like their leadership. I like their size, but it's one of those things with Rick. I mean, I bid it last year with Purdue. I told myself until they do it, I won't pick them. And it's that same way with Tennessee. I will not pick Tennessee until they prove to me that they can make a meaningful run in the tournament. They have 0 Final Fours in their entire program's history, I'm pretty sure. And they just haven't shown me anything that's going to change my mind. And I just hope we don't get a Tennessee-Houston race to 45 game in the Elite Eight, because I don't know who wants to see that. Then I've got Houston going to my national championship game and losing to Florida, though.
All right, Jay, we'll go to you next. Your kind of thoughts here on the Midwest region.
Yeah, I mean, Houston's a popular pick. They're just every team that they play, they just demolished. I mean, in the Big 12 tournament, they ran through all their teams. I mean, they're just a wagon, and it's going to be really fun to watch them come down the stretch here. As far as the other games go, I mean, I'll take Gonzaga over Georgia. I mean, Gonzaga is just a team that you don't want to pick the Final Four, but they're going to give Houston a run for their money, and that's going to be a great game. I agree, Matt. So I'll take Gonzaga in that game. As far as the other games go, I mean, Clemson, yeah, they made that run last year. I do think they have a really good chance to do it again with Chase Hunter and those guys. I mean, they're a really talented team. I know the ACC, I was talking about my Duke logic in the ACC and, why pick Clemson to go far, but they're really talented. I could definitely see them doing some damage here. I'm not really on that McNeese train. I'll take Clemson in that spot. Yeah, I mean, Purdue, like you guys said, they're down this year. They're very one-dimensional. High Point's just a school that, first time they've been in the dance in a while. So definitely could see them winning. I guess I'll go High Point, but Purdue, they're always vulnerable for these upset type of games. I guess I'll go High Point here. Just because Purdue's just so vulnerable this year. It's just kind of a retooling year for them. I'll take Illinois, and then I'll take Kentucky. I mean, like all of you guys are saying, I do not want to pick a game like this. Yeah, I mean, I'll go Kentucky and then UCLA. And then as far as Tennessee goes, I really want to pick them the Final Four. I really do. Great defensive team, Sakai Ziegler, and they have a lot of really good talent on that team. But Like, it's like the golden rule in college basketball right now. I mean, it's Rick Barnes in March. I can't. It's really tough to pick them to go to a Final Four as of right now. So I'll ride with Houston to go to the Final Four, but honestly, I would not be surprised. Tennessee is really, really talented. I mean, with those guys and really, really good defensive team. I mean, Tennessee Houston is going to be. I mean, yeah, like Keith was saying, a race to 45 or 50. That's just a game like dating back to the 70s. So that will be, I guess, fun to watch if you really like good defensive battles. So I'll go Houston, but I mean Tennessee's just very intriguing. So they're kind of like my 1B type of pick. So I'll just go Houston for now.
And when I looked at this regional when it came out, and I just something didn't like it felt off with it. I honestly think Houston may be the first 1 seed to lose. And I'm looking at Gonzaga specifically. Gonzaga has made the second weekend for, I believe, 10 seasons in a row. The last time they didn't make it was 2014. Think they can give Houston a really tough game. Matt mentioned they haven't lost since like February 1st or something around there. You can't go that long in the tournament and win it. You got to have a loss mixed in there somewhere. And for Houston, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it's to Gonzaga, which really opens up this Midwest region. I'm not, obviously, we're going to probably be wrong on all of these, but out of the 4 regions, the one that can turn most into like the East region from last year, where NC State blew open, the whole region and won it. Honestly, it's the Eastern Midwest. I'm not sure which one. I'm leaning more towards the Midwest right now just because of how disastrous the bottom half of that bracket is. It could just get very intriguing. But overall, I actually think I have Clemson coming out here in the Final Four. I think they got a good run here. I think they'll end up playing High Point in the second round. They'll have Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. And then when you get to the Elite Eight, it honestly could really be anybody of Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Those are probably the 3 ones I see the most. I wouldn't be surprised if Utah State potentially makes a run to the Sweet 16. UCLA in the Eastern Time Zone this year, atrocious. I believe they are 1-6 after the Big Ten tournament in the Eastern Time Zone. That game will be in Lexington, so that is not a good sign for Mick Cronin's UCLA Bruins, but I have Clemson coming out of the Midwest region. So that's all the games. We have gone through each region. So I figure we'll just go around. We'll start at what you have the Elite Eight at, what you got the Final Four at, your national championship, and your national champion. Jada Coster, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. I'll go Michigan State. It's like, you don't follow, like we were talking about, like being cautiously optimistic. Like I think they got a really good draw here. I mean, like we said, Iowa State's very beatable. I'm not going to get too into it, but I think Michigan State can really come out of this region. Obviously, we're all biased here. That's our favorite team. So I'll take Michigan. We'll have Michigan State in the Final Four. Florida, I mean, we already talked about them. They're gonna be in this. I think they how hot they are, they can definitely get there. As far as the Elite Eight goes, I forgot to mention that Florida, Texas Tech. Texas Tech, I think, will beat St. John's. So it'll be Florida and Texas Tech, with Florida being the winner. Houston, Tennessee, and then Houston going to the Final Four. As far as the other games go, I actually have Oregon beating Duke in the Sweet 16, which gets to the Elite Eight. So being Oregon, Alabama, I'll take Alabama in that spot to go to the Final Four. And then you got Houston beating Tennessee. So those are my picks. So Alabama, Houston, Michigan State, Florida. Ones and 2 seeds. I hate it. I do not like it at all. I mean, you got Jay Williams on ESPN, got all 1s and 2 seeds in his Elite Eight. Just like very boring picks. Like I feel like there's going to be I mean, obviously something will happen. I do not like it. Probably will change it, and this is the bracket for now. So
Jay, your national championship game and your national champion.
yeah, of course, the most important thing, surely. I have Florida over Houston in my national championship game.
All right. Matt, Heath, we'll move to you guys next. Your Elite Eight through national champion.
This is very subject to change, but at the moment, I have Michigan State playing Creighton in the Elite Eight. I don't know what it is about that Creighton team, but I hate picking against them. I've been terrible at picking against them all year. I don't think they're any good, but every year they make, I think they make, that's the thing. It's like they're always in the Sweet 16, it feels like the last couple of years. Doesn't matter when they're at 5, 6, 4, 3, doesn't matter what seed they are. McDermott gets out of the first weekend. It's not pretty. It's not that entertaining to watch, but Kalkbrenner and Ashworth are, I hate them, how just effective they are. I mean, they did again against UConn the other night. And Auburn's not playing well enough, in my opinion, to win that game. And I think just having 7-footer like Kalkbrenner, having Ashworth on the outside who hits every shot, anytime Creighton needs a shot to go in, Stephen Ashworth seems to hit it. Doesn't matter where on the floor he takes it from. This team doesn't shoot super well. They're not a bad shooting team by any stretch of the imagination. And they are like top 3 in the country in 2-point shooting. They shoot like 60% from inside the arc, which is absolutely insane. They're playing really well as of late. And Jay said, I think Michigan State's got a really favorable draw. I think Iowa State, with their health concerns, I don't think they get past Ole Miss. And even Lipscomb could be a tough team. Lipscomb's a top 100 KenPom team. Moving down, I think Florida and St. John's in the Elite Eight. There's always like a 1-2 matchup, and I think this is definitely going to be one where the region really isn't many lingering teams around to really make any scares. So I think Florida St. John's, I think I'm going to stick with that. Moving to the other side, I got Duke, Wisconsin, even though I very easily think Oregon could get there as well, but I think Duke is just going to edge out Oregon. But so I got Duke, Wisconsin. Wisconsin makes it to the Final Four. Bottom region, the Midwest. Right now I have Houston, Tennessee, even though I agree if like Houston, Gonzaga, I know, Nick, you mentioned how Gonzaga's made the Sweet 16 like 7, 8 years in a row, whatever it's been. Houston's also made the Sweet 16, I think, every year except for the first year that Kelvin Sampson made the tournament with Houston. They are all these are just 2 teams that are consistently in the second weekend every single year. And it sucks that they have to play, this is an Elite 8 level, Sweet 16 level game, on Saturday afternoon of the first weekend. I think Houston wins, but I think the winner of this game is going to win the region. I like Clemson, but I don't like them as much after watching them play a solid Louisville team yesterday. So I think right now I have Houston playing Tennessee in the Elite 8. I could see it. I think I'm going to stick with Houston. I don't know who's going to make it from the bottom side of that region. It could be Illinois. It could be Kentucky. It could be UCLA. Maybe Mick Cronin lit a fire underneath his team like he did back in January, and they find a way to go rattle off a couple wins. And right now, my Final Four, MSU, Florida, Wisconsin, Houston. I have Florida and Houston in the title game. Right now, I have Florida winning it all. By Thursday, it'll probably be Houston. I really do. I think it'll be Houston. I think we're looking at another 2019 year where not a lot of upsets. I think we're going to have a low-seeded, or I guess high-seeded Final Four. Like the seed total is going to be below 10, and it's going to be some really good basketball, some really high-end teams, not a ton of Cinderellas. I don't think I have a single double-digit seed. I have Vanderbilt as my only double-digit seed in the Sweet 16, I believe. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I can't wait. Right now I have Florida winning it all, but I think it's going to end up being Houston.
So I think I've got Auburn and Michigan State in the South region. I think it's going to be similar to that 2019 season where Auburn is just going to eke by Creighton, and they're going to eke by like a Yale or a Texas A&M in that Sweet 16, and they're just MSU is going to come out for blood. I love their draw. Whether they get Ole Miss or Iowa State, I think they're both very beatable teams that have shown their flaws in the late season here. I've got MSU winning that game in a thriller, going to the Final Four. In the West, I've got Florida and Texas Tech. Again, Florida just looks like a juggernaut right now, and I think they're destined to be just kind of run through like a UConn, like UConn in the last few years. I think they're just going to run through that first few parts of the Elite Eight. Texas Tech, I think that Texas Tech St. John's game is going to be an absolute war, and I'm excited to watch a game like that. I think Texas Tech just has a little offensive firepower and will just eke out the Johnnies, and we'll play Florida. And I've got Florida winning that game to play Michigan State in the Final Four. In the East, I have Oregon and Wisconsin in my Elite Eight. I just think Duke is vulnerable, and I don't trust Duke. I don't know if I trust Duke to win consecutive meaningful games to get to a Final Four. Dana Altman's a great March coach. I think he's got great players with experience that know how to win. And Wisconsin, I've got Wisconsin. I know I kind of was a little skeptical of them earlier, but when I look at it, I don't trust Bama to play any kind of defense. And I love John Tonje. I think he's a great player, and I think Wisconsin has all the intangibles to beat a team like Alabama, and they've got the seniority and the size and the skill to do it. And then in the Midwest, I've got Houston and Kentucky. I can't pick Rick Barnes to go very far in the tournament. I just can't do it. I think Kentucky has beaten Tennessee twice this year. I think they'll move on to the Elite Eight. And then I think Houston's they have a gauntlet, but I think they'll get there, and I think they'll beat Kentucky pretty handily. And so I've got Oregon versus Houston in my Final Four, and Michigan State, Florida. I think Florida will unfortunately beat Michigan State, and I think that Houston will take care of Oregon after a great run. And then I've got Florida beating Houston 81-75 just because the app tells me I need to score. So there you go.
All right. So in the South region, for the Elite Eight, I do have Auburn against Michigan State. I believe that is a consensus here. Although I do feel like I have to change it up just so we don't go complete jinx here. Give me Auburn to make the Final Four. In your West region, I have Florida against St. John's. Like was mentioned, that Texas Tech St. John's game, if we get it in the Sweet 16, that is going to be absolute war. It's going to be a great basketball game to watch. Give me the coach with more experience in those type of games. Give me Rick Pitino. Still think Florida makes it to the Final Four there. In the East, I have your Elite Eight as Oregon against Alabama. As of now, I have Oregon making the Final Four. I like it. I don't love it. I could probably see myself changing to Alabama at some point. And then in the Midwest, I have Clemson going up against Kentucky. That will be my Elite Eight there. I will have Clemson moving on to the Final Four. So your Final Four would be Auburn, Florida, and then Oregon, Clemson. That just doesn't sound right. Oregon or Clemson playing for a national title, which is why I'm starting to overthink this already. But I think your national championship game ends up being Florida against, I guess, Clemson at this moment, and I don't like that as I say it. Give me Florida as the national champion. As I went through that just sounds disgusting, so I'm not 100% sure that's going to stick, but here we are. So, yeah, this is going to be a very interesting tournament because it doesn't feel like there's many upset potentials, which means it's going to be filled with them, but it doesn't feel like there's that one where it just sticks out like, hey, this is probably going to happen. So it's going to be a very interesting tournament to watch. So, I mean, given that, we've made it through the whole tournament within an hour, basically. So let's wrap it up there. Anybody have any parting thoughts here? Jay, we'll start with you. Your final parting thoughts about this tournament, the first look at it.
No, I agree with what you guys said. I mean, there's not really going to be like a lot of it's not going to be like a Cinderella, like an NC State making a run. Like, I just don't see that happening. I think a lot of these teams this is a pretty loaded tournament because you got Florida just running through the SEC. You got Duke and Cooper Flag. They could potentially do a lot of damage. There's just not going to be a lot of some big Cinderella that's going to make it like we've seen the last few years making a Elite Eight or Final Four. I just don't see that happening. So very, 2, 3, 4 heavy, 1, 2, 3, 4 heavy in the final four, I would think. Subject to change, but I think it's very, it'll be a pretty elite final four with no big Cinderella, which should be pretty fun to watch because we do love Cinderellas, but also I want to see really good basketball. Like I don't need to see, I don't need to see a St. Peter's as a 15 seed in the Sweet 16 I just don't need to see that. Like it's fun at first, but give me the elite basketball in the end. So
Matt, Heath, we'll go to you. Any final parting thoughts about this tournament?
I mean, I'm doubling down on the Crimson Tide going home early. It's just me. I cannot hammer that home enough. This is a team that only won by 8 against McNeese. They lost. Now the Purdue game was at Mackey, but on a neutral floor, they only beat Rutgers by 5. They lost to, a good Oregon team. They were played in a competitive game against UNC that they ended up winning. Remember North Dakota? They did go to North Dakota, but still I know that Eagle staff kid is insane. He's going to be playing for a Power 5 school next. They only won by 7 there. South Dakota State put up 80 on them. But otherwise, I think it's going to be fun. Like Jay said, I think this is going to be. I really think it's going to be 2019-esque. I think this is going to be a low-seeded Final Four. Survive. I mean, right now I have Creighton being Auburn. I'm very much leaning back towards going back to Auburn to the Sweet 16. I just don't know if Auburn gets to the Elite 8. I truly don't know. I'm going to do more research on number 1 overall seeds. Because if I have Auburn in the Sweet 16, then the Sweet 16 in the South has Auburn, A&M, and Ole Miss plus MSU, which I don't love. That doesn't seem right to me. So, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Wait, even though the committee screwed over West Virginia horribly, but I to deal with. Heath, do you have any final thoughts?
I just think it's gonna be a really fun tournament. Kind of like you guys said, I don't really see a whole lot of potential for Cinderellas to make it Sweet 16, if that even. But I don't know. I'm just really excited to watch it, and hope that this is the year for Tom Izzo to get a banner hanging up in the rafters again for Final Four, and see we go from there.
And I think that is the perfect way to close it out. So we're going to wrap up this episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. Thank you so much for watching. If you just stumble across this, click like, click subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. We'll be back at some point. I don't know what the schedule is going to be like for the tournament, but we definitely will be back for more. So make sure you tune into that. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you again soon for another episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show.